Thank you to everyone for joining us today. We are Arts, Culture, Health and Wellbeing Scotland, a national network linking together and advocating for supporting those working at the interface of arts, culture, health and wellbeing in Scotland. So in October, we're delivering a series of conversations in partnership with Scottish Mental Health Art Festival. And this session is being recorded and we'll share our video to our YouTube channel after this session today. Today, we're going to hear from some of the artists involved in the visible theme commissions across the festival, and we'll have some time at the end for questions, comments, or discussions. But they are much better than myself to tell you about what they're doing. So I'm going to pass you over now to Christian Noel Charles to hear more about what's going on.
Thank you so much. Hi, my name is Christian Noel Charles. I am an artist based in Glasgow, but I am the guest producer or as a part of the new producers program for the Scottish Mental Health Art Festival this year. And I was invited to moderate this wonderful discussion between Simone Seals and Sanjay Lago, as well as Jane Mather, who is running a little bit late, but maybe she'll appear in within our conversation in a very unique way. These artists have been selected as the commission artists of the Now You See Us commission this year, which is fantastic. And I'm so excited because what they've written for their proposals and their ideas were so innovative, creative, and very profound. And I look forward to see, hopefully you come both October 25th and October 26th next week at the CCA in Glasgow to see these wonderful performances. So it's going to be, they're timeless works. So we look forward to it. First, would Simone and Sanjay, would you like to introduce yourselves as well? So just so we can, just so everyone gets your vibes and personalities. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. My name's Simone Seals. I'm a cellist, a performing artist, poet, and collaborator. I focus mainly on improvisation and what I say, creating weird little sounds on a wooden box with strings. I'm really passionate about finding moments of joy within classical music and really just exposing people to the cello, because how cool is it to be near one?
Yeah, hi, I'm Sanjay Lago. I'm an actor, writer, became a comedian about 2 years ago, which is a scary step, and also a collaborator and also a facilitator. Currently undertaking a master's in learning, teaching in the arts. I'm really passionate in my work looking at mental health through a South Asian lens, but also within a theatrical lens. I am very passionate about diversity, like where are the global majority voices, where are the neurodiverse voices, and I'm also interested in improv and also devising. I love creating stories of unheard voices, things that we don't see or hear in the mainstream theatre scene. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Simone and Sanjay. So I'm gonna just dive right in here, as literally our theme for the festival this year is called Invisible. And there's so many connotations, so many contexts of what that phrase could be and how it relates to our, not just like our mental health, but like how we walk through life and what we see and witness and being surrounded by it. So if you want to go one at a time or like introduce conversation, what does the concept of invisible mean to you? So
I'll jump in. It's something that I really resonated with when I saw what the theme was, because um, for me, being invisible is like, it's weird being, and I mentioned it sort of, I guess, when I made my application, of being the only Black person in the room and that being a really visible thing, but then all of my culture and heritage and everything else being invisible because no one else can relate to it. So I sit in this middle point between, I'm very visible as a Black person, but then my whole sort of history is invisible to everyone else, or even what I'm experiencing is invisible to anyone else, because uh, at least in the UK, being American in the UK, sometimes there's this thing of not really talking about or acknowledging race. And that can be hard because, well, I am a Black person and that comes with things. And for that to be not acknowledged, for me, is sometimes creates this sense of invisibility.
Sanjay?
Yeah, for me, I think the theme was really interesting for me because I think about it. So a lot of the work I create is also autobiographical, and the piece that I'm sharing is based on an autobiographical story. So, like being South Asian in the arts, like the South Asian community being one of the largest in Glasgow and in Scotland, but where are we in the art scene? Where are we in the theatre scene? We're very invisible. Also being queer and South Asian, there's still a taboo topic there. There's also a taboo topic about mental health in the South Asian community. Don't really talk about it. There's no language. There's an idea of how men are meant to be in Punjabi Indian culture. And then also being neurodiverse in South Asian, there's no language for neurodiversity in my culture. So the theme of invisible, I feel like I'm invisible in different layers. And it's like, how do I fit into society and make myself visible and not let the barriers get in the way? So for me, yeah, the theme felt very real and very connected to the theme because people always say to me, "You're always very chatty." Oh, we all, and people, you know, so many people. And I'm like, yeah, because I've had to hustle. I've had to really work the room to not be invisible. Had to like for the last. I've been an actor for 13 years, and I've had to really work hard to be seen. But everybody always like, "Oh, you're so talkative." You're not. I'm like, yeah, but underneath, there's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of like imposter syndrome. Should I be here? Should I not? So yeah, the theme really called to me in so many different levels.
Amazing. And we have someone who is now visible. Jane Matherd is now in the call. And Jane, can you introduce yourself and also answer the question, what does invisible mean to you?
Yes, I'm Jane Mather, and I'm a storyteller, and sincere apologies for being late. My tech just wasn't playing ball. Invisible, yeah, I mean, I think at my age, I've sort of become invisible. I feel like, you know, I'm no longer sort of young and attracting that kind of attention. I'm no longer, I think, seen in a lot of different roles, the kind of role that I often work in. I support people with mental health issues. I'm also a storyteller, but I see when I'm in that role, I feel like people see through me to the stories. So on that level, on a personal level, I don't feel very visible, but in some ways that can be a bit of a superpower because it means I can kind of blend in lots of different places and not really be kind of noticed. So yeah, I think invisible, it can mean not seen, not noticed, but it can also mean just being able to see things. I don't I guess I don't talk a lot. I've come more with my own thoughts about the piece that I've been working on, and I know for a lot of people that I work with, they are not noticed in the right ways. And people have said that, you know, they can be singled out for things that people see that are different about them, but they're not noticed for the positive things. And I think that's something that I wanted to address in what I've written about. Oh, Christian, I can't hear you.
Sorry, I wanted to make sure I heard everything in the space. So, well, this kind of leads me into my question of your piece, Jane, for In the Heart World, if that's correct. And telling the story of who's forgotten or buried without the ceremony of Hartward Psychiatric Hospital. How did you first become connected with the history and what drew you to it?
It was a chance encounter, really. I was on a train coming back from a storytelling residency in a small town called Newark Hill. And it was one of those October days where not at all like today, which is beautiful and bright and sunny, but it was kind of gloomy and misty. And I looked up and there was this, what I thought could only be a castle, but it was a ruined castle looming up from the side of the train track. And I was fascinated by it. and immediately had to Google it and see what I'd been looking at. And it turned out that it was the decommissioned psychiatric hospital. And it might have just stopped there, but I happened to be put into contact with a playwright from Shotts called Margaret McSeveny. And she said to me, "Do you want to write a play together?" And I went, "Yeah, okay," having never written a play. So that really, I really just felt like, just jump outside of your comfort zone, you know. And we talked about various things that day, and one of the things that I mentioned to her was seeing Hartwood Hospital, and she said, "Do you know that there are over 1,000 people buried there without without any kind of grave marker or name?" And I just wanted to cry. It just felt wrong. And we decided there and then, because Margaret was telling me that there's a group of people called the Friends of Hartwood Pauper Cemetery who care for the graves and the grounds. And she said, "Would you like to meet them?" And of course, the answer was yes. And I went out with Margaret to Hartwood's cemetery. And it was such a beautiful space. They had done so much to tend it, to clear it. There was, one of them was going around planting bulbs. They had painstakingly reunited every marker. They'd found that there were several hundred layers there, many where 2 or 3 people were interred. And all told, there was 1,255 people laid to rest there. And they had painstakingly reunited every name with every layer number, which was quite astonishing. And just such a lot of research, because I've been to Motherwell Archive, which is where they store the ledgers with the names of the people interred at Hartwood. And it's not easy to read. The handwriting's very old-fashioned script. So they spent hours and hours making sure that that happened. They set up a website so that people can trace lost relatives. It's quite incredible what they did there. And as I was talking to them, I thought, I must tell this story. I must, you know, get this out there somewhere, what they have done, but also, you know, how terrible it was that all these people who had lives, some of them families, some of them really tragic circumstances, were just buried. Like society didn't want to know about them anymore. They were just buried and forgotten about. And when the hospital shut, the whole place had fallen into neglect. And nobody was really caring for it. The council, I think, mowed the lawn, but sometimes the little metal stakes, the grave markers, got in the way. And what the Friends of Hartwood Pauper Cemetery found was that some of them had been thrown over a fence because it was easier for the groundsman to mow the grass. So they weren't even shown that small level of respect. And one of the woman that basically spearheaded this group, her name is Lorraine Duncan, and she had been inspired to go over to Flanders and look for the grave of a great uncle of hers. And when she found the grave, when she traced it, there was an old lady looking after it and caring for it. And she asked her what she was doing. And this old lady had been tending the graves there since she was a little girl. And that just, she thought, if a stranger can do that for my uncle, then I want to do that for the people that are buried in Hartwood. And that kind of is how it got started during the time of COVID restrictions. The people in Hartwood, so it was a small group of them at first and didn't always meet with local approval, but they started caring for the cemetery. And it's just such a lovely, tranquil green space now where people can sit and reflect. And for many of them, it actually became their tending their own mental well-being by looking after the place, by gardening, by mowing the grass. One of the people who volunteer was for many years a traffic policeman, and he was very traumatized by some of the road accidents and things that he'd seen in his time as a traffic policeman. So that to help in the cemetery gave him a lot of solace. I think it was very good for his well-being. So that really was the door that opened. And then when I started looking into some of the histories, because I've only been able to tell the histories, and only partially, of two people in the piece, so many other doors opened, so many extraordinary stories began to emerge, of some of people who never ever really should have been in psychiatric care. Some of, you know, well, one of the characters, I don't think it's a spoiler to say this because I think it's been in the Sunday Post, but you know, one of the people that I talk about in it, she was only in Hartwood for 2 weeks before she passed, and she had come from a very privileged background originally, but had fallen on terrible circumstances after her lands in Poland were absorbed into Russia, and she no longer received any income, and she wound up in Hartwood at the end of her life. But we found that she had a husband who is also buried without he's buried in what looks on the surface of it like a magnificent grave, but it's with someone else and he's not named on it. So there's so many ramifications, there's so many stories that have emerged. It could go on forever, and so could I, but I won't.
No, it's basically what you're introducing and like sharing within the work that you're about to exhibit is like these layered journeys and stories that have been revealed within the space of these from Hartwood, and like how that feel, and literally it's such a process, and literally kind of dissecting that literally from every story that you've encountered. It's a journey. So it's long term. So like this is like one moment that you're really unraveling and trying to understand and reflecting in that space. And Simone, your piece Broken Silences focuses on the creating and collective healing experience. So can you tell your layered journeys and reaching to get into the position of the speech, and what inspired you to approach this theme in a deeply impersonal and communal way?
Yeah, well, I think I sort of had the concept. I've done collective healing performances before, where I just sort of get a group of 30 people, I curate a theme, whether it's on grief or trauma, or I did one opening the Fringe Festival, which was about just gently easing into a really busy period, with music and poetry and food and community, as a way of setting intentions to be like, okay, this is a busy time and there is a lot of bad things happening in the world. So how do we celebrate the arts and sort of hold this tension that we have? And for me, the collective healing experience is really about not getting anyone to process anything. It's not about being like, okay, well, we are going to heal now. It's mainly just creating a space for people to acknowledge these thoughts and these feelings that we sort of don't always have the time to do because we're always going to the next thing, or we're constantly being fed things through social media or the news. So it's just really a moment to say, okay, there's some bad things happening right now, or I'm going through a really hard time, or I know someone who's going through a really hard time, and that weight is there. And just to acknowledge that everyone in the space has a weight like that, and to just sit next to it and say, it's here. And I can be with it and also experience music and poetry. And And the concept for this particular collective healing experience actually came after I watched Faraz Saleh's performance Balfour Reparations, because, I mean, she's an incredible woman and artist, and seeing how she imagined a future for herself as a Palestinian woman of what it could look like and what could happen. And a lot of the imagery she uses, sometimes she's like the only person there. And I was like, oh, what must it feel like? I mean, I've definitely had that experience of being the only person in space, but what must it feel like for her to be the only person in space, watching a genocide happening and trying to imagine a future for herself and for her family? And I was just like, okay, well, I want to sort of honor that imagining of what it means to be the only visible person and somehow still feel so alone. And yeah, that's really where the concept came from. And then it's just about curating poems from people whose voices you might not always hear, and whose stories you might not always get the chance to experience, and to sort of respond to that through music. It's also, for me, Audre Lorde is a big inspiration, and a quote from her that honestly changed my life and how I interact with the arts is when she said, my silences had not protected me. And this idea that, oh, if I just don't say this thing, or if I don't speak up, or if I don't, then I'll be safe. But actually that didn't change anything. And it's better to say something and have a response than to not say anything at all and just constantly be in that space of limbo of what we think is safety. But I believe we can find more safety by speaking out, and because we then can make change. So that's what my concept is about.
Amazing. It's I feel like your work as kind of like a cellist, and you're creating these experiences in healing spaces. It almost is a entry point, or like an opening for people to have space to open up and speak up, and really kind of literally go internally and understand how they should feel themselves in the way that they can push themselves to speak out. And Sanjay, for you, you're really diving into like yourself and like really reflecting on yourself and your identity, but also like the community around you, especially within Scotland. And your performance, that you're making of Teraburu, it's exploring the intersectionality of the queer identity, your queerness, and South Asian identity and mental health. So why is it important for you to bring these narratives to a stage, particularly within this theatrical setting, as well as you're bringing like it's an intimate performance as well. It's like a very special performance that you're giving out. So what are you thinking within your layered journey to build that? So
Yeah, I think for me, so the piece has been on a real journey, and I have been working on it for 7 years now. And I started it more because again, it's about visibility. I don't see whenever I see South Asian work in theatre, I either see it to do with the partition of India, or people just talk about Bendigo Beckham. And I'm like, there's more to us than Bendigo Beckham, Bollywood, and um, my God, I forgot the one that I said, partition. So it's always like, what are the other stories? And growing up with Bollywood, there's such a view on how men are viewed, especially like in Bollywood, how men are viewed. So I was always very vocal about where are those stories that we don't see. And then I had a tricky period in my own life, and I also lost 2 friends to male suicide in the space of 6 weeks. So it was quite a personal journey of like, just when you lose friends that you spend a lot of time with speaking to, and then also you have that dip. And I did the performance at the Tron Theatre and the Outside Eye sharing, which I won't go into too much detail, but what I shared that night wasn't particularly safe. It wasn't the best performance way to share what I did share. But from there, I got an award with the National Theatre of Scotland for 2 years to develop the piece. And the one thing that I learned through the dramaturgy was to separate myself from the story. So the piece originally was 100% autobiographical. And looking back, yeah, it wasn't the right decision. It wasn't the right headspace to put me on stage and talk about it. So the piece that I am sharing is talking about queerness in South Asian communities, talking about masculinity, and also being South Asian in today's world, and the stereotypes that are placed on men of color, especially when we look at the time of the world that we're in now. Like, being a man of color just feels like there's so many stereotypes and negativity. So I am looking at it from a queer point of view, but also South Asian point of view, and also a neurodiverse point of view, because I don't have a filter at times. I say what I feel. If I feel someone is racist, someone's offensive, I will say my piece. But this piece, I have separated myself, and it's actually told through the lens of a character, but it is my story. So I felt like theatre was the right way to do it, because I feel like theatre is a brilliant tool to educate. I wouldn't be doing this masters if it wasn't for my drama teacher, if it wasn't for some of the people I worked with at drama school, someone being one of them, that I learned through people, I learned through art. And I feel like it's such a great tool for people that maybe aren't people that aren't 100% into the educational stereotypes of how we learn. And I feel like art is one of those ways that you can learn like that. And that's how I learn. I learn like that. I can't learn like that. And that's why I wanted to create this in a play world. And also, there is a bit of Bollywood in there. There is a bit of that, but we're talking about the stereotypes of it and the negative connotations that are placed upon men.
Oh, wow, fascinating. Like, I guess what I'm really dissecting and I'm reflecting within my own work as an artist is the separation of just basically the subject and the context and like the messages that you want to put across as yourself as and also the artist. It's not separating it, not in a way of like research and like analyzation, but it's just also just for your mental health and your mental space to give access to and how much you're willing to give within the subjects and the and like the work that you want to give out, produce, share, and like express by. And this is for a question for all three of you, like following from Sanjay's comments, is like, what role do you believe art plays in addressing the mental health challenges, especially for those who feel invisible in the society? So who would like to open? So, Jane.
Well, it gives a voice, but a voice in a non-confrontational way. Although art can be very confrontational, but people are responding to the art, not the individual that's created the art. So I think it gives a space to open up dialogues, to open up discussions about some of the issues surrounding mental health and well-being. And you know, it's a space that's once removed. So when Sanjay was saying that the play originally had been very much autobiographical and that not feeling safe, when it is a work of art, it can have so much of you in it and so much of your experience in it, but you're not putting yourself under the microscope in the same way, and people are responding to the work. So I think it's vastly important, other than the simple joy of creating something, which is a reward in itself.
I think for me, when I think about the question of, sorry, Chris, can we like get the question again? My neurodiverse brain
Yeah.
went on a blank as I was starting to speak there.
It's like, what role do you believe art plays in addressing the mental health challenges, particularly for those who feel invisible in society?
Yeah, I think art for me, because I also work with young people, and I think art in general plays a really strong way in conveying stories. Because maybe not everybody is able to read, maybe there's a lot of other factors. And I feel like art, I'm a visual learner, and something visible, I think plays a lot of real power as well. When I think of the theme of invisible mental health and arts, I think the arts play a really great tool in bringing visibility to stories and voices we don't maybe hear, or also people that maybe haven't felt comfortable to ever share their stories. And I think what I've noticed in my arts practice is, from different areas of working, is people will take part in the art, maybe not give you feedback, but it opens up a confidence to be able to come and have a one-on-one. And I feel like that's what I've realized with the theme of invisibility is there's a neat part of art is it brings a sense of confidence, maybe not in a group setting, it might be one-on-ones. And I think that's what I really cherish when I work with people who work in a mental health context. You see them come out their shell a bit more, and that is through the exercises of working with them like in a context of art. I hope that answered that properly.
Oh, yes. And so, Simone?
Yeah, I mean, I think similar to both Sanjay and Jane, this idea of safety, I think art allows at least me to start to understand myself and to be able to have the language to communicate things and to experience things in a safe place, either as an audience member or as someone who's making art. I mean, I just really think about like Linkin Park has made a comeback. Linkin Park was like my favorite band when I was like 12. And to now listen to the music again as an adult and realize, oh, that like got me through something, all the anger and the rage. And I mean, they spoke a lot about mental health and sort of what my friends and I jokingly call like the demons that we have up in our brains that are just chattering away. That like the cello for me has become my voice, and that is how I get to express all my heartaches and hardships and also joys. And I think like art and mental health, it just gives people a safe container, whether it's crocheting or sewing or stained glass windows or seeing a piece of theater or writing poetry or making up games. Like games are also for me a form of art because I can't, how you come up with all those rules, I do not know. Like I think you have to have a creative brain to do that. So yeah, it's a safe container for me.
Nice. So we're almost halfway about this discussion, and then we're going to leave about 20 to 15 minutes of a Q&A for everyone on the floor. Whoever have questions, please, if you want to speak up, you can, but we'll put it in the chat. But I'm going to give this one last final question for overall discussion. So for this year's Scottish Mental Health Art Festival's theme is showcase is called Now You See Us. So what from the beginning when you applied or like when you saw the opportunity come at hand to you, and I think I don't know, when I came into working for the festival, I didn't know what the full theme was at the time. I don't know if Now You See Us was immediate, but we're now here and we see you. So what do you believe in? What do you think the term Now You See Us stands, and what do you want to apply it for your future work and practices?
I think for me, like, it's something that I've used quite recently, quite a lot as well. Like having been an actor for 13 years in Scotland, I've never been cast in Scotland. I've never performed in a large scale theatre or in someone else's work. And people always say to me, like last night I was at an event and they're like, "Oh, you've been around for a while." I was like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Oh my God, you do so much." I was like, "Yeah, but all the work that I'm doing has came through hustling." And it's a weird one because like Now You See Me, I sometimes don't have high hopes for myself. I always have imposter syndrome thinking that I'm not good enough. And I think it kind of it felt like a moment of joy to be seen when I got the email. Because I find this industry hard. I think there's such an issue with diversity. I think there's a lot of tokenization goes on and a lot of tick boxing. It's like, oh, you've got one Asian actor for the whole year, done. We're diverse. Got one black actor, we're done. And it's like, I just feel like you don't see unheard stories, you don't see new people. And I think there is such an issue with diversity in the arts that when I heard that it's Now You See Me, I was like, I've been hustling for so long and it actually felt like, oh, someone actually knows I'm here. And I like even Simone knows me. Like when I was at the conservatoire work at as a student, I was always very vocal about I exist. And I think it all stems from me as the industry needs an overhaul when it comes to diversity in the arts. It needs a proper understanding of the stories that we share and also like where we're based. Like there are communities here that we still don't see. Like where is the East Asian community in the arts? Where is the Latinx community in the arts? They exist here, but we're not visible. So it's a phrase that is quite real for me in my practice because those are the kind of people that I'm trying to get in that we don't see. And that's why I create this work to be like, there's some people you don't see. So, and that's why I created this piece and that's why I created this show because again, when we think about suicide as well, which is a big part of my practice in male mental health, we don't talk about men, especially in the west of Scotland. We don't talk about the different cultures and the connotations, and that's why this piece looks at that. So yeah, the phrase of "now you see me," even though like I'm part of this, I feel like it's still a part of me and the work I will create even after this. Because by doing one project, it doesn't mean that I'm now seen forever. It means that the hustle still continues to get seen. And I'm also thinking about the people after me. I was saying this in my class before this, is the reason I do the work isn't because of where I am now. I'm still hustling, but I'm thinking about the people after me. That if I don't do the work now, then you're going to lose a whole generation of young artists of colour and global majority that will not see that this is a space for them, and they won't come into the arts industry. So now you see me is for now. We also need to see people that are coming after us, because if we're not voicing for them now, then you're going to lose them. Yeah, that's what that felt for me.
Yeah, I think same for me now. Like now you see us, I don't know, all I think of is the iconic picture of Angela Davis, like with the big fro, holding up a fist in the air, or like Asada Shakur, just all these like black feminist female figures that I mean, I really didn't find out about until 4 years ago because I didn't get taught about them in school. So I think for me, the theme is like, oh, we've always been here. We've always been doing awesome things and radical things, and now you get to see this on like a larger platform rather than in these like underground like clubs and protests or whatever. Like, no, this is on stage now, and similar Sanjay, like it's not about me really, it's about showing others, like giving them the idea that it's possible for them as well. And to sort of always be thinking of it as a ladder, like always reaching down to lift others up, and never thinking that like I'm on top, which I feel is a very, I mean, colonial concept and idea of like, oh, I want to like conquer everything, and like now you see me and I'm the only one you see. It's like, no, I want it to be like an entire village, an entire continent that and everyone gets to experience. So yeah, those are my thoughts.
Jane?
I don't even know if I am seen. Yeah, I've been sort of sharing stories for 13 years, and I must admit, when I got the email about the showcase, I was absolutely delighted, but I did something which I rarely do because I couldn't quite believe it. You know, everybody's talked about imposter syndrome, and I was feeling exactly that. I had to actually print it off, and I read it 3 times, and I thought, really? Well, that's brilliant, you know. And then I got someone else to confirm, you know, that I wasn't misreading. So yes, I think it's wonderful to be able to bring this story to the stage, but I really actually don't feel it's about me. You know, I think this story is so strong in itself that, you know, possibly somebody else would have presented it in a different way. They would have created it in a different way. But every step of the way in the process of writing this story, I was working with the local communities. I was working with the Friends of Heartwood, Pauper Cemetery. I was working with Lanarkshire Association for Mental Health. I was going into local primary schools and talking about what I'd discovered. And I think the way I've done it is drawing on sort of traditional storytelling skills. One of the things I did was share some of the stories that I've woven through the piece. So it's, you know, there are some quite shocking aspects to the Heartwood story, because this was, you know, the people interred in the cemetery were interred there between 1896 and 1954. So the approach to treating people with mental health problems at that point in time was not terribly progressive, although Heartwood was a little bit ahead of the curve, because the director there actually believed that green space and creativity and activity and poetry and music were nourishing for people's mental health. And he employed a lot of staff who had other skills. They weren't just, there to be nurses and look after the hospital. So he really believed in a much more holistic way of treating people at a point in time where often people were in asylums, as they were called then, because society didn't really kind of know how to cope with the fact that they were different in some way, or behaved differently in some way. So I don't know that I feel seen as such. Quite sort of, I've got a kind of sort of Scottish reticence about me, I suppose. And I'm from quite a rural place, and I always feel like, oh, really? You want me to tell stories, but this story was bigger than me, much bigger than me, and it needed to come out. I think it speaks for itself.
Mm. Thank you, Simone, Sanjay, and Jane. So we're going to open the floor to questions, any statements, introduce into the conversation. So if you have a question, please either unmute yourself or raise your hand. And anybody open the floor. So. Oh, no. I could keep going. So. Oh, yes. Bess, did you raise your hand? Yes.
I do. Hello. My name is Bess van Sleeuwen. I'm from the Netherlands originally, and I live in Ireland. And I'm studying arts and health in the National College of Art and Design. And I was interested. Thank you so much for all the speakers, and I really, really enjoyed your presentation or your conversations. And I was interested in when you were talking about healing spaces and opening up the spaces and holding the spaces for people. How do you? So you, I think it. Sorry, I'm just looking here at my notes. I think Simone said that you sit beside your experience. Maybe you sit beside your, but you're jointly experiencing music or poetry but and the quote around if I don't say it, I'll keep it safe. I found that really really powerful as well. Like that doesn't work because it eats you up inside. But what is your responsibility as an artist when things open up and when you hold the space, but when people are processing in different ways? Or what is your responsibility, or how do you deal with that ethically?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's something I think about a lot. And I'm very passionate about, making these safe spaces and allowing people to do it safely for themselves as well. And something that I'm very clear about the structure of the show from the top. So I'll introduce myself, I'll introduce the concept, I'll introduce what we're speaking about. I'll invite them to think about or consider everything that is coming up for them, or the trauma that they might have, and invite them to let that sit in the room. And then I go into a sonic meditation. So I actually refer to Pauline Oliveros' sonic meditations, and I get everyone to sort of sing collectively. And that is so that it's not one of those, oh, you're an audience member and you're on your own, but everyone gets to sort of like sing a note to someone, and it's sort of recognizing that we're all here in the space together. At the end of that, I'll do some poetry and some improv. For this performance, I'll also have a discussion. So there will be a poem that we discuss all together where people can share how they feel and things like that. And then I end with some poems and some music improv. And I sort of try to also leave time for people to chat to each other and to maybe have a cup of tea and to talk to me if they want to continue the conversation and the discussion. So it's not just a, oh, we've ended now, bye forever. It's like, okay, it's a gentle winding down, and we can talk and things like that. The feedback I've been really grateful to receive is that it is calming, and it doesn't seem to not agitate, but you know, when you sort of like get hyped up, it doesn't seem to do that to people. It seems to sort of like ground them down, which I think helps keep it safe.
Thank you. Orla, do you have a question? I saw your hand raised during the answer. Would you want to speak up, or you could write it on the chat as well? No. Oh, that was a mistake. No, I'm literally the same boat. It's all good. And it's like also, but yeah. Anybody else? Because I could turn it back quickly. So and so I'm seeing, I guess, like one of the things I really think of, I've been thinking about these days is literally the amount of care that we each kind of put into our works, and like what and how we guide our practices through care in these, especially like within these times, and like what's going on, and like our capacities in terms of kind of building that. What I would say, and this is, and I kind of go both personal and communicative. Do you each have suggestions of any self-care practices beyond your own work that you do to apply yourselves, that you would, if you are open to share? So, and I think we can end it on that note. Or do you have like, even, I know, Simone, that you've been sending, dropping so many quotes, like anyone that, if like final words that you want to kind of give out in place, something, a little nugget to take away. So.
So for me, like my self-care stuff is I have a cinema card, and I try to escape to different things. So a lot of my friends ask me why I carry a big bag with me. I always carry a rucksack with me, because you never know what situation you're going to be in. But I always love to have a book. I always love to have a notebook, because I love weather dependent. I love sitting in parks. I love being around nature. So I would say for self-care, do things that you enjoy and do things that bring you joy. And I love writing poetry. I've got a new addiction, which is the poetry pharmacy. I've been telling everybody about this. And they have a wee shop online, and you get little jars of pills, but they're like themed. So I have 11 bottles of pills, and you have like poemacetamol, or you have comfort or joy, and they're little pills, but inside them are small poems, and they have been giving me joy, and it kind of lets me escape. And my thing that I would say is we're living in an age of darkness with a lot of like stuff going on in the world, but where you are in the world, always take time for yourself, and always find the time to find the little sparks of light and joy within the darkness that we're in, and hold on to the people that make you smile and bring that joy to you, because that's how we'll get through the tough times, is by loving and supporting each other.
We've just had a really nice comment come up there in the chat that says, I think we need to find our happy place where we can hide when the world becomes overwhelming. I listen to music a lot, and I make my room cozy and safe.
Thank you for the comment. So Jane, Simone, any little pieces of advice to take away? So
Yeah, I mean, I'm all up for being cozy and safe. Like, I'm turn the lights off, lay on the floor, get like a heated blanket, and just just sort of try to go back to the womb almost, just like being warm and cozy and calm. But to answer your sort of provocation, Cece, do I have any nuggets of words? One of my other favorite poets is June Jordan, who I also didn't learn about until only in the last few years. I would have loved to have known about her when I was like 12. This one I think about a lot because I just think being truthful to yourself, to others, but really to like oneself is so important and can be so freeing. And she says, to tell the truth is to become beautiful, to begin to love yourself, value yourself. And that's political in its most profound way. And I'm just like, yes, June, it is. So that's my little nugget. Be truthful.
Thank you, Simone. Jane, any input?
I don't have an easy answer. I do think sometimes things can become quite overwhelming when we're deluged with the news of hard times in other places and even within our own country. But I feel that I need to mention a poet now as well. And I really love the poetry of John Burnside. He passed away in March. And when I was expecting my boys, that was a long time ago now, almost 20 years ago now, because they're young men. I was in London and I was working in London, and I felt quite tired and quite overwhelmed by the hustle and bustle. And his poem, he wrote a series of poems about anticipating the birth of his own son and things that he would say to his son. And the language is so rich in nature, and the smell of the sea, which I grew up with. And it just transported me to somewhere else. So I felt that was incredibly nourishing. But for me, yes, spending time in nature, whether that's in a park like, Sanjay, or walking in the woods or up a hill, that's incredibly important to me, to have a little bit of that time on a daily basis. Even if it's just looking at birds and things, I have a habit of talking to birds. Oh, hello, Mr. Robin. Hello, Mr. Blackbird.
Mhm.
And which highly embarrasses my sons if they happen to be with me. But yeah, we invent little narrative stories about where that bird had come from or what's going on there. So I think it's finding those moments of joy, those sparks of joy, when things feel a little bit overwhelming, and making that safe space for yourself.
Amazing. Can we give a short round of applause or just like a celebration emoji for both Simone, Sanjay, and Jane? Thank you so much. Yay! Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So a gentle reminder, you can see these three fantastic artists present their works. Everything that we talked about in the discussion will be presented next week in the Now You See Us showcase at the Scottish Mental Health Art Festival in Glasgow at the CCA. Simone will be on the 25th of October, and Sanjay and Jane Mather will Sanjay Lago and Jane Mather will be in the Heartwood workshop. Oh my God, it's a buzzing weekend all over. So like my words are everywhere. So Sanjay Lago and Jane Mather will be presenting on October 26th. And so the Now You See Us program is next week. So, but also don't forget, this week is also the Focus on Film program, which kicked off yesterday. And there will be a collection of films screening all throughout the CCA starting today, kicking off with the Film Awards tonight, all the way into Saturday, October 19th. So please look at the Scottish Mental Health website and book your tickets, book tickets for their performances as well. Please tell all your friends and spread the word. So we're trying to gather as many as possible. There's plenty and a lot of space for reflection, healing, love, etc. So many stories to be shared. So thank you for coming. Thank you for taking the time to listen and having that space. My name is Christian Noel Charles. Artists here, and we hope to see you all at the festival and the Now You See Us program later today. Thank you so much. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.